Om Sarva Mangala Mangale Shive Sarvati Shadike Charanara Trambike Gauri Narayani Namostute. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. To that auspicious of all who are auspicious, the one who is ever one with Lord Shiva, who is the three-eyed one, Gauri, the Divine Mother of the universe. To that one, Narayani, one with Paramasiva, we pay our eternal obeisances. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karvo Vahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishvavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May Brahman protect us. May we not find fault with each other, or with the world, or with the Dharma teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. This week is our second class on the subject of the worship and study of Shiva and Shakti. As I started out last week's class, I said that everywhere we look there's a combination of Shiva and Shakti. Sri Ramakrishna said Shiva is the transcendent reality and Shakti is the dynamic power that comes out of it. So it's a nicer way of putting it than to say the active and the inactive, or the transcendent and the relative, because Shakti is no ordinary being. As I just chanted to her, she's the auspicious, the most auspicious of all who are auspicious. And we see her movements in everything, whereas Paramasiva is inactive. So that's one of the great teachings of India, particularly through its tantric stream. As we know, there's a Vedic stream and a tantric stream. And Tantra would go the way of bhakti yoga more, and ceremonial worship, karma yoga, karma kanda portions of the scriptures of the Upanishads, of the Vedas. And then we know that the Vedic stream would go more the way of early on the sacrifices and all, but later on the non-dual scriptures and the Jnana yoga, the astute mind. And so these two streams, we say, have always been mingling their waters throughout time and come from one supreme pool or ocean of consciousness. And when they mingle their waters, then all these different philosophies and religions and cults and sects of India merge and borrow from each other. And it's the same with the great seers and saints and sages of India. There's so many of them, multitude of them, and distinct amongst all the religions because of that cross-section of beings who actually realized non-dual awareness and had names for it, like Buddha and Nirvana and Yoga and Asampragyata and Vedanta and Nirvikalpa and so forth. So this is really what sets them apart from the other religious strains. And in this instance particularly, the more the better. If we can have more views, perspectives into divine reality, more windows into the Father's mansion, if you want to put it that way, then we come back with a much more profound reckoning of what divine reality is. And it's admitted by the seers in Vedantic tradition that it's inexpressible, indescribable, but that didn't stop them from using words to try and describe it. One of the beautiful songs in India, for instance, says, meditate fully with all concentration on the Divine Mother of the universe, try and comprehend her. You'll never be able to do it, but by merely trying, your mind will get purified. So you can put your mind upon the great teachings, the Dharma, which comes from mothers, sons, and daughters. It's this dynamic energy that's not just mere food energy, and it's not just the breath, prana, and it's not even the power of thought. It's what animates all three of those things. So sometimes we say, if we want a quick definition for it, is that Brahman, the inexpressible reality, or whom we're calling Paramasiva here, is not thought, and is not energy, and is not matter. So if you take those three away from the Western thinking mind, then they have to stop. Well, then what is it? See? And then you tell them, actually, you should ask, who is it? Who am I? And there's a simple and profound answer to the question, who am I? You don't want to just ask it over and over again. That's just the beginnings of inquiry. They call it Atma Vichara in Vedanta, self-inquiry, or inquiry into the nature of reality. And so if you ask, who am I, you're going to have to ask at the same time, what am I not? And that's going to, you're not matter, and you're not energy, and you're not thought. So if you take those three away, then you're left with this sort of a transcendent idea of the nature of reality. Call it the light of Brahman, or in India, for instance, the sound is more important. They talk about divine sound in the case of the word that comes from Paramashakti and Paramasiva in conjunction. They call that bindu and nada. Special words for those. And they also talk about Maya as a mere sound. Amrita Bindu Upanishad. I was looking at that just yesterday because we're coming to a close of teaching that in the San Francisco ashram. You can tune into that weekend after next, and you'll find out that there's these profound slokas we're studying, and one of them says, this Maya is just a mere sound. They're trying to get you to know that it originates from sound and vibration. Everything originates from vibration. And so you'd have to ask yourself questions like, what's causing me to understand what Babaji's saying right now? And how is it coming to my ears as vibration? It's being initiated in a mind, and it's being spoken by lips and tongue, and it's causing a sound, and that's floating across ether and with airwaves, and then it's entering into your ears and striking against your eardrums, and you're sitting there thinking, I hope that's very profound. That's why I'm sitting here listening, because it's very profound, and you don't hear mantras like this very often. So that's what's here to segue into this chart. Last week we had a couple beautiful charts on spandas. Spandana is a word in the Sanskrit dictionary. If you look it up, means a vibratory sphere or a vibrating place. So the earth would be a spanda. The whole earth, the whole universe would be a grand spanda. But it's a spanda whose vibration is being felt through physical things and through senses only. It's not being felt yet through subtle senses, which are like in your dream state, or in causal states, they call them. The three worlds are basically gross, subtle, and causal. And we only have one world that's taught us, that's apparent to us in the Western culture, so we're only 1/3 there. And besides that, if we added in the other two worlds, and we're aware of them, like they did in the old times in India, and accounted for them, then we'd realize that these three worlds, that Paramasiva and Parashakti, are actually beyond the three worlds. So how are you going to get to any realization of what's transcendent, or have nirvana under the bo tree, or nirvikalpa in the forest or on the mount, if you don't know about these other two worlds that you're unaware of? So you have to account for them and think about them, and then you'll see how vibration has come from, in the beginning was the word, from an origin, and then it's worked its way down. Well, or down means, of course, down and out to denser vibrating spheres, denser spandanas. So we had that chart last week, and That's why I'm so thrilled every time I take up Sanskrit. Sanskrit just awakens me, and it causes me to think and remember things that English could never do. There are some beautiful English expressions, for certain, but there's not a lot of them that are spiritually oriented and that cause you to think on deeper and higher levels. So when you come up with words like that, even Maya or Spandana or Sankalpa or Samsara or Brahman or Ishvara, then it causes the mind to feel very enthused and very inspired, and compels it to want to speak about it. That's what Milarepa says in beautiful Tibetan Buddhist seer. He said, when I think about the Dharma, I can't help but want to express it to others. You could say, well, his cup isn't full yet, so he's still gurgling, Sri Ramakrishna said. Still has to talk about it. And when you actually realize it, you'll shut up. Just quiet down and you'll be absorbed into it. But so thankfully, Divine Mother in that tradition, the Tara or the Dakinis, didn't cause him to shut up. It caused him to gurgle some more for us so we could get these teachings. Teachings are a sign of vibration and a sign of intelligence. So if you put sound and meaning together, which is basically kind of a nutshell version of this chart, then you have more of an idea of the origin of the worlds, that all objects have come from your mind, is how Vedanta would put that. But the means by which they do is there's intelligence and sound, vibration and meaning all together. And they call that the third stage of the word. So you can hear about the word, it's in the beginning and was with God and was God, as Jesus told John. And that's very profound to unwrap that, because I don't think it has been unwrapped very deeply in Christendom. But you could also think about it in this ancient Vedic tradition by encountering the 4 stages of the word. And then you'll know how everything proceeds. So Tantra has its version of in the beginning was the word. It has its version of the 4 stages of the word, which is more a Vedic offering. And it's called Kama Kala. And so we can look at that first as a chart to take up this week. I have actually 4 selected for you. Whether we'll cover them all or not is another matter. But we should probably first look into the title of this class is basically the worship and study of Shiva and Shakti. Shiva and Shakti, if you put the word para in front of it, para means supreme or absolute. So Paramasiva and Parashakti would be the extreme or absolute transcendental levels of Shiva and Shakti. Later on, they'll appear on earth as a divine couple. Sometimes Vivekananda would say that. Behold, Sita's beloved has come again. In one of his songs, he sings that. Sita's beloved was Ram. So Rama and Sita were way back in the earlier Yuga. And so now they've come again as Ramakrishna and Sharda, he says in his song. So yeah, if you have the eye to behold and the ear to hear and so forth, then all of a sudden you'll follow the appearance of these great beings. Sometimes they're called steamships on the ocean of consciousness. Steamliners, because they'll take hundreds and thousands of people across the ocean every time they appear. Across the ocean of suffering, I mean, and into the ocean of bliss. At least into the ocean of salvation, if nothing else. So, Paramasiva and Parashakti, when Sri Ramakrishna said, everything I see here and touch and hear and taste and smell with my 5 senses, composed of the 5 elements to me, is a combination of Shiva and Shakti. So that's when they come down to the level of the object. And Gahana it's called. So when the object is there, then you know that those 2 are in it. For instance, last week I said there's the sky and there's clouds moving across it. If you looked at that and you were aware of these teachings, then you'd say, oh, I see there's Shiva with Shakti running across it. Or if you see a canyon with a river running through it, you'd look at it, you wouldn't just say, oh, look at the pretty river, and wonder how that was formed. Or you wouldn't say, oh, that took hundreds and thousands of years for that water to cut through the rock. You'd say instead, well, there's Shiva as the stationary basis and Shakti running through it. And so you'd immediately have a spiritual connotation or word to assign to everything, like Sanskrit did. And then all of a sudden, those words would put you at a different level of consciousness from everyone else. And you could also find that you could contemplate those words. That's called manana. Think it over in your mind. Or sometimes it's called yukti. Let's reason about that a bit. Shravana manana means you hear about it and then you think it over in your mind. That's the Vedantic meditation there. And then nididhyasana means you realize it. So you could put that in another age. It was called shruti, to hear, like a shruti box in musicians, right? They squeeze a little shruti box and it makes a sound, and you can play your harmonium to it and sing your songs to it and so forth. Shruti means also scriptures, that which must be heard. In your life you have to hear that. You'll hear many things, and all of that is a mere sound in Maya, as the Amrita Bindu Upanishad states, I just said. But what you must hear absolutely each lifetime is the Shruti. That is the revealed scriptures. They'll tell you about the nature of things, and you won't have to wonder about it the rest of your life, or be in confusion, or have many questions that never get answered, or not, as Krishna says in the Gita, forget what to do and instead do what you shouldn't do. People don't understand yet, some of them, what not to do and what to do. Isn't that Shiva right there, Shiva and Shakti? What not to do or actionless is Shiva, and what you should be doing is Shakti. So it's action and inaction. And if you understand them as one, like this chart will tell us, then you'll understand that Shiva and Shakti are one, like fire in its heat, or like snow in its whiteness, or like water in its wetness. Krishna used to say that all the time. So he saw everything here a combination of Shiva and Shakti, but he could look at the effects of things here, the sky and the moving clouds, or the horizon and the mountains outlining it was another way. You see the horizon is stationary, and you see the mountains are moving in certain ways. So trees on them are moving and so forth. Snow is melting and moving. So Shakti is there as a dynamic power atop the horizon, which is just endless ether, endless sky. So if you knew that, then you could trace the origins of them further in. So that's what you need to do. And manana, you need to be able to think about those. What else do you think Lord Buddha was doing for 48 or 49 days under the Bo tree? Was he just lost in transcendental meditation all the time? I doubt it. They say he met Mara, the devil, in his meditations, the equivalent of the devil in India at the time. So he was having to deal with his mind, he was having to deal with the collective mind and the cosmic mind and the ancestors and Mara, and all of that he was dealing with by sitting a long time. And so he would be thinking about everything he learned. He learned a lot from the Samkhyakarika. He had 2 Samkhya teachers before he went in. He learned a lot from being an ascetic in the forest, living on boiled leaves wrapped with tree bark around him. He learned a lot from the Vedanta that was at the time, and the Tantric teachings. So basically he took all that with him and wanted to find this new way out of the problems of the present age. Sometimes they call him India's rebel child, because he saw that everything was at a poor state right now, and so he wanted to bring back things, and he did that by profound things, by the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. That was his way of doing it. But my point here is that he was thinking all the time, manana, in his meditation. I've often described being in Maya, or ignorance, and being in transcendental reality as 2 pieces of white bread. You're supposed to have a sandwich. So you haven't got anything in between. You haven't got the nutty, yummy filling of Hawaiian avocado. You haven't got the lettuce and the tomato and the sprouts and the sun seeds and the nice eggy oleaginous mayo that you put on it, and the sun seeds of karmic works to God and mankind. You don't have any of those things, so you have a sandwich with just 2 pieces of white bread. That's what it's like to be without knowledge of the cosmology, to be without knowledge of the Word. All the filling is gone. And so you can either just sit there and your meditations get nowhere, or you can try and rise above everything and go to some transcendental platform and fall in and out of it, if you even are able to establish yourself there. So you need to have these footings. Enlightenment dawns on the mind by stages, says Sri Ramchandra in the Adhyatma Ramayana. So, and remember, this sandwich is vegetarian, so we don't hurt our animal friends. It's very important. That's Swami Vivekananda said, as long as military domination is present in the world, then people will eat meat. See? But as soon as science advances, and you don't need to go to war anymore, and people are all pretty much taken care of, then the vegetarian will come in. See? That's how he put it. He used to say, my master was a vegetarian. So that's an important move for the soul who's nonviolent, to take into account plants, animals, and all levels of the Akasha, because it's all a combination of Shiva and Shakti, so you're going to want to treat all those things very gently and very consciously. The whole movement of mindfulness in Buddhism is also based in that. And 25 generations before Buddhism, before Buddha appeared on earth, there was the Jains, and they were nonviolent for 25 generations. That's a long time. Prior to Buddhism, see how far back India's nonviolence goes. And maybe that's why they've been able to produce so many illumined, sensitive saints, seers, and sages by the droves coming out of India. And why America maybe hasn't seen one yet. So this is all based on the fact that you've got to have some filling in your sandwich. See? And cosmology is that. Philosophy is that. Without cosmology and philosophy, spirituality isn't probably going to have a chance to present itself to your mind. What to speak of develop there. So in that regard then, we see Paramasiva and Parashakti as being the two who are one. And they're inherently one at the inception of everything. Sorry, there's not a word in English that, except maybe non-origination, that gets us behind cause and effect. The ultimate cause, or the causeless cause would be a way of saying it. There you see it at the top. Advaitic realization is basically Shiva and Shakti in union. So like fire and its burning power, right here on this world, in material things, if you have the eye to see, you can see Shiva and Shakti in everything. But you have to, it's like the light, the light bulb and the light it emits, the sun and the rays it emits, the ocean and its waves. Everywhere you look, there's the static and the dynamic. So if you can see them and then be able to separate the two from one another for analysis, then you'll be able to develop a consciousness that sees Brahman everywhere. And so Tantra's version of that is to say that Shiva and Shakti are inherently in one. What is the nature of them? Shiva here says, if it's devoid of Shakti, then Shiva, devoid of Shakti, is awareness that lacks fullness. So Tantra believes that both being and becoming are inherent in reality. You don't hear that teaching given in yoga and in Vedanta and in Buddhism so much. Basically, Tantra believes that Shiva and Shakti, that is being and becoming, are inherent in reality. So the becoming, they would describe that as lila, play. Why the Lord would want to sport, and the suffering that comes from sporting as well as the pleasure, that's another question, maybe better answered by non-dual schools. But in this rendering, we see that if becoming is also inherent in reality, then you see that if Shiva is devoid of his Shakti, then it lacks fullness. It lacks the fullness Tantra desires to see. And Sri Ramakrishna used to, one instance was, what was he said? He pointed to Holy Mother, his divine consort, and his wife, and said, without her I can't even raise my finger. So that would be Shiva's had all these fingers, but without Shakti he can't move them. So the Shakti power inherent in everything is worthy of being worshipped and actually needful to be realized, so that you know what your actions mean, you know what your breath means, you know what your senses mean, you know what you're connected to your mind, mana prana sambandha, so you know what all these connections mean. So Shakti gives meaning. That's the other side it says there. Shakti devoid of Shiva is freedom, but lacks perfection. So you see that when the background of Brahman or Paramasiva is forgotten, then all of a sudden people are acting, but they don't know why they're acting. And sometimes the actions become unworthy of them because they forget the static background upon which the act is done. So very important to have a full knowledge of both of these. You could even sing about that if you wanted to. Antakama pranti madrishanenam krodi karlala tamavididihi shankara sevana chintana diro vishaya bharava shakti mayoshmi. Stotram it's called. That's Lord Shiva. He says, death, beware, else I will subject you to Bhairavanath, whose courage and prowess none can measure or withstand. I have realized my energy is Shakti and that it is one with Shiva, so my full protection is guaranteed. So this is a fearless Bhairavanath stotram, so the seer is singing about that. He's realized the oneness between Shiva and Shakti. And therefore he says, death beware, or I'll subject you to that. If you come near me, I'll let you know that both Shiva and Shakti, my father and my mother, my divine parents, as Sri Ramakrishna used to call them, are both birthless and deathless. And I've realized that inside myself. So beware. The Bhairavanath stotram. Bhairavanath is sort of you might call him a very wrathful form of Shiva. He'll take everything to task that is confused or ignorant or unsure or certain or weak, and he will destroy that in you. So if you take Bhairavanath as your ideal, to destroy that kind of ignorance. Shakti Mayoshmi, he sings. She's there within me. So if both of these realize their innate connection or their intrinsic connection, that is, if they're realized in the individual consciousness as being the two who are one, then everything from the lowest worlds to the highest becomes clear. And you see everything that way, in clarity. Khyati, it's called, in both Buddhism and in Patanjali's yoga. So that's at the top there. And to explain this, how the one, the inherent one becomes two, they use this idea of bindu. It's another very profound word. See, you see here a dot and a triangle, a trikona. Trikona is a triangle, a dot is the bindu. So, even architects, scientists, carpenters, mathematicians, they all know the importance of circles and triangles. A straight line isn't going to cut it. See, a straight line, in fact, you want to cut along it. But the real interesting diagrams are the perfect circle and the three-sided. If you have two sides and the other's not filled in, then it's not going to be very effective to work with. So the most important of all geometric symbols are the circle and the triangle. And so in Tantra it's the same way. You see here, Bindu is the dot. So it's like Shiva and Shakti who have been polarized. Like they're frozen together in one. See? But then you can see the trikona comes in. Mula trikona, the primal triangle, is a way of thinking of the inception of form. So both circle and a three-sided triangle will close out open space. It won't be able to, you'll enclose it inside of a diagram. So a three-sided mula triangle at the spiritual level means existence as pure knowledge and essence as pure potency. That's how Shiva and Shakti manifest themselves. So you can see the knowledge bindu at the bottom left of the trikona and the power bindu at the bottom right of the trikona. So this is, Tantra is very big on mudras and on yantras, symbols and diagrams. And if you see some of these yantras that have triangles superimposed on triangles, then you see how they form little spaces in between the three sides if they're superimposed on each other. And each one of those, sort of like a mandala, each one of those is representative of a loka or a world. And when the yogi meditates on a yantra like that, he'll want to penetrate through to the bindu. That is, through all the worlds, and break that bindu, through that bindu, pierce through it. So there's a whole ideology and philosophy around that in Tantra that pierces through all these formations that Maya can create to get to union with Shiva and Shakti, to get into union with them. And so this bindu has a knowledge side to it and a potency side to it. The transcendent knowledge is Lord Shiva, and the power is Shakti. And when they were polarized and they broke, then all of a sudden they broke into lower bindus, then you can see how this inception of form begins, from oneness into two-ness, into three-ness, you say, and then finally into the many-ness. So that falls next. You can see all of this is above the red dotted line. And below it, or the next level of it, you see how Kamakala is now, the desires in time would be the way of putting that. But if desires in time are manifested as sportive play, then you can see Shiva and Shakti are conscious entities in that play. If the individual being remains aware of what they're seeing, and as far as knowledge and its power, like yoga would call that chit shakti, the power of thought. If they remain aware of that, then they know the meaning of everything again. If they're devoid or stripped of the awareness of that, like many people in this world, then they don't know the meaning of their life. It's pretty easy to hear that mantra. I don't know why I'm here, who am I, and what's the meaning of my life, and I'm suffering and so forth. You hear that mantra a lot, but you don't hear the mantra of Shiva and Shakti are one, like fire and its burning power, at this level of existence. But on the way there, this formation of Kamakala, which is the name of this chart, means that this desire to project in what Tantra calls vichikirsa is freedom in expression. Expression is going to be limited or dumbed down in beings that lose the consciousness of Shiva and Shakti and everything. They're not seeing anything but, I say, like a river in a canyon, or like a word in its utterance. See, they're not seeing the meaning in all of that. So you can see here, Kamakala is these four things, represented by a dot, or we call that the bindu. And it's also, bindu would be like the third eye in the other traditions. Kamakala gets expressed by spanda, vibration, and sound. So I mentioned that early on, so it could strike your thinking twice. You could hear it a second time. Kamakala is produced in Prakriti and in tattvas, and therefore in nature. So they're putting on these forms and animating them. That's called Vishishta Advaita, really. Ramakrishna would say, he would say that as long as I consciousness aware remains in the human being, then they're going to think that all of this has become, that God has become all of this, rather. They have a certain feeling that all of this is the expression of Brahman. But that's not there in most beings. They don't think that way. They think it's just nature, or they see all the separate aspects of it, maybe. But as long as I consciousness remains in a being, they're going to see all of this as God in everything. So that's, of course, what you don't want to lose track of as you get embodied. This is why you go to a teacher and take a path and you study the scriptures, is that's going to be reinforced in you lifetime after lifetime. Otherwise, the master would say, the more times people are born in ignorance, the more they will think the world is unreal. The world is real. The more lifetimes they take, the more they will think the world is real. So people are beginning to think that this vibrating sphere of atomic particles that change at a billionth of a second is actually real, and that it's the only place for mankind to lay its head. Birds have nests, foxes have holes, but you don't have any place to lay your head here because it's all vibrating particles. So if you know that Shiva and Shakti are manifesting through Prakriti, that is or Maya, you could call it, the insentient material substance of everything, and through the tattvas, like the five senses, the five elements, and nature, then you won't be a materialist, for instance, or you won't be ignorant of the origins of all of these things. You won't think these origins fall back in time as a linear movement on a material sphere of existence only. You'll know that they came from deep within you. So the people who have that feeling that all of this came from deep within them are those who are aware of the transcendent power or wisdom of Shiva and the dynamic power of Shakti. And then there's the desire to create on a cosmic level. So if you were to go to a more Vedic rendering of this, it would be Shiva and Shakti who give the Trinity, or the Mahat, the great mind, its power to produce worlds. There are stories about that in the scriptures, like Lord Brahma creates the world or projects it, and Vishnu sustains it, and Shiva destroys it, right? That's AUM, or creation, preservation, destruction. We would prefer to call it projection, sustenance, and withdrawal, because nothing ever gets created or destroyed in that tempest in a teapot that goes around all the time. So in the scriptures, Divine Mother gives Lord Brahma the seed mantra to create the worlds, to project the worlds, and he breathes that word, and all the word then the vibrations of the utterance of that powerful word begin to have effects in the ethers, and then the worlds get projected through we'd call causal to subtle to gross states, or you could say from deep sleep to dreaming to waking state, these levels of consciousness they talk about. So the utterance of that word is responsible for all the tattvas coming forth. So this is the awareness of Shiva and Shakti as Kamakala. that is might say, the primal desire to create worlds of name and form in time and space. It's a little bit different rendering than you will hear in the non-dualistic schools. There's another dotted line then that proceeds from that. You can see there And the notation there is, this is the realm of Mahamaya above, and then the realm of Shakti mantra above. You see, all of this has to do with not just Maya at the dole and veiling level, but Maya at the Prakasha Shakti level, that is, unveiling level of things. There you see the soul will realize the pure sense of I. It contacts higher tattvas such as Ishvara, and it attains a pure body. Deha Shuddha it's called. So they say these two things happen at this level of Mahamaya above this red dotted line. That's within you. That red dotted line could represent, for instance, some strong obstacles, grantis or knots, like the Vishnu granti or the Brahma granti, hard to penetrate through. So a soul is trying to work its way back to the source, then it's going to attain a pure body, and then it's going to contact higher tattvas. What does it make you think of? What we looked at last week, the 12 higher tattvas of Shaivism was the chart. And that's Shaivism's way of giving you a 12 leveled trikona to put on top, like a crown, on top of Kapula's 24 cosmic principles. So it's just like the black hat ceremony of the Karmapa. He puts on this hat, you see. It takes him like almost an hour to do it. So everyone's waiting for it, you see. It reminds me of that. And when the hat goes on, then, you know, everything is complete. This great ceremonial hat. And it kind of reminds me of that philosophically, is that this trikona, if you understand it, is you're contacting higher spandhas, as it says here. So that happens right there when you realize the pure sense of I. Say Purusha would be a good way of saying that. You realize the true individual I, Purusha, because what's the false individual I called? The ego. It postures, it pretends, it's problematic, and it tries to usurp from the throne this true sense of I that's in you. If you always had the true sense of I in you, then the ego wouldn't be a botheration. You'd ripen it, and it would get in step with you, and it would agree with everything, and it wouldn't get in your way. You wouldn't be tripping over your own shoelaces all the time. So this true sense of I can contact higher tattvas. You see how that's why so few people are aware of God, or God as higher manifestations. Every religion has some sort of system about that. It could be like, say, heaven and angels and the realm of the saints and so forth. You'd have some sort of ideology that really is speaking to you about kingdoms of heaven within at different levels. But in India, you see, it's been very well outlined by all of its darshanas. Yoga, Vedanta, Samkhya, Tantra, Buddhism, 37 limbs of enlightenment, and the 24 cosmic principles, and the 12 spandhas, and you could go on listing and naming all of the ways in which the Indian seers and sages envisioned this and put it in new wording in Sanskrit, and finally at Buddha's time even in the Pali language, derivative of Sanskrit, and in all the other languages of India, in their different provinces that have a huge percentage of Sanskrit in them. So even down to this very day, they have ways of explaining all of these systems that were seen in different millennia, really. The century is nothing in India. A millennia begins to be more substantial way of thinking of things, and several millennia then makes even more sense, because then you're bringing together Ram, Krishna with Ramakrishna, or Vishishta with Patanjali, or Buddha with Vivekananda. You're beginning to shrink time down. Kamakala, you're beginning to get control of time, and you can see how Shiva and Shakti worked to produce all of this. Prakriti is a production, but Prakriti is just the outer 5 elements, or just the outer manifestation of this. But in water, you see Shiva and Shakti. In fire, you see Shiva and Shakti. In land, you see Shiva and Shakti. Looking at a mountain, like I said, all of a sudden, there's an avalanche. See? Run for your life. Well, that was Shiva sitting there, and all of a sudden Shakti decided to move. So that's the inherent power that's in Shiva, which is the wisdom movement, the dynamic movement of everything. And it's in your motion of your hand, it's in the words in your mouth, it's in the thoughts of your mind, it's in the steps you take across the room. And this is why you become conscious or mindful of all of this, and keep it in mind, if you can, minute to minute. How about every hour of the 24 hours of the day, from waking to dreaming to deep sleep and back to waking? You keep that in mind. And you could say here, then it's put very nicely there, isn't it? Awareness of Shiva and Shakti as Kamakala. This also renders the word kama in a whole different level. Kama usually just means base desire, like sexuality or sensuality. But when you put it together with time, at a cosmic level, you see how Shiva and Shakti are in everything. Sri Ramakrishna was so spiritually minded, he once said, well, I saw this Shiva and Shakti in the mating of a dog, of 2 dogs. So he said that then you see everything as that static and dynamic power. That is in everything that you notice. If you only are noticing the dynamic power at a gross or base level, then you don't know the background upon which it's playing out. A nice way of introducing that would be witness consciousness. Sakshi Bhutam. And that's good in either language. Sanskrit, Sakshi Bhutam, the witness of all phenomena, or the witness of all phenomena in English. It means that you're aware that there's a backdrop upon which everything is happening. And you're the witness of it. So you see the play of everything and you're witnessing it, then that means phenomena is a manifestation of your projection, and that you are trying to identify with the 2 who are one, and eventually when you get to the 2 who are one, you have samadhi, or satori, or nirvikalpa, or nirvana. And that's possible for beings to have even here in the human body. Right here they can go into a high state of consciousness. They just have to will it to be so. Remember last week we had the 4 aspects of Shakti. Icha, will, and jnanam, intelligence, kriya, action, and drovya, the producer of substances, like the 5 elements, air, earth, fire, water, and ether. These are the 4 sub-shaktis, or powers of Shakti. So that chart filled in what wasn't being said here about the dynamic power of Shakti. She's got will, she's got knowledge, she's got the ability to act spontaneously, instantaneously, in the minds and hearts of all beings, and she's got the ability to produce substances at a subtle level that will eventually become air, earth, fire, water, and ether. Call them air, call them earth, solidity, and water, liquidity, and fire, radiance, and so forth. Those ideas or words are in her, and then when she wills it through her intelligence, they will become the worlds. Words become the world, the worlds. I mentioned that teaching Holy Mother over and over again. Don't you know that objects are just your own thoughts made concretized? So all these objects came out of you. Reminds me of my teacher going around the ashram, and he was a monk, so he didn't own anything. So if you left anything, once I left something in the hall, I left this auto harp in the hall in its case, nice, neatly tucked off into a corner, no one's going to hit it. He walked through the hall and all of a sudden you hear him shouting out, "Whose thing is this?" So that came out of my mind. It's my thing. I have to go get it, and take care of it, and be responsible for it. And so all these things that are around you you have to be responsible for, because they're your own projections. Now, whether that's true philosophically or not, we happen to believe it is. It's very practical to think that way, because then people would take responsibility for everything. Even if it weren't true on some level, you didn't know about the word, about Shiva and Shakti and everything, you would just be more conscious or more mindful. And you would then take care of everything, including plants and animals and so forth. It's not just animal husbandry. You're taking care of consciousness in animals. You're taking care of Shiva and Shakti in animals. And making sure that they're not tethered, and they're free to roam, that they're not kept from, that they're fed, that they're watered. And that's not to make money off them or to eat them later. It's to make sure that all beings are fulfilled and satisfied. All levels of consciousness are operating in a peaceful, non-violent atmosphere, which is their right as living beings. They came out of the process too of your mind. Talk about animals, really we just think about them as projections of our own consciousness. So that is on the level of the realm of Mahamaya that you're thinking all that. If you step one step down, it's the spell of Maya you're talking about. How does Mahamaya become the spell of Maya that people fall under? That's a whole other way of thinking. You can see here that it's duality is considered real, is one way of defining that. As I was just saying, Sri Ramakrishna said, if you live many lifetimes without this knowledge, you begin to think that the world is real, when it's not. It's not scientifically, it's not vibrationally, it's not because of death. There's so many reasons why the world is not real. Not real means changing all the time. You can't get it to stand still. It's Mahamaya's projection of animated things that has turned into a spell because you don't know her as being beyond them. So you're falling into the appearance of things, not the reality of it. So that's this next dotted line here you see. There you would have to birth Viveka-gyan. Viveka-gyan was one of the favorite teachings of Lord Vashishta. If you read the great scripture, Yoga Vashishta, you'll find him talking about Atma-gyan or Viveka-gyan all the time. Viveka means discrimination between real and unreal, and gyan means essential knowledge. So you must have that essential knowledge that allows you, in the moment, to see the difference between what's real and what's unreal, or what's changing and what's unchanging, what's immutable and what's mutable. At this level, then, it's the ability to distinguish between chit and achit. Achit is not a smooth sneeze, by the way. Achit. It's chit means thought, and then there's the absence of thought, basically. So Viveka-gyan would allow you to go beyond the thoughts that created objects, that cast a spell on you. So as I'm taking this from the top down, or from the inside out. If we were to come up, would be more what people need to do. So we'll reverse this in a minute when we get to the bottom. But if you're coming into embodiment, and you're trying to bring Shiva and Shakti as Kamakala with you, like a conscious soul would do, then this is the way it's going to look. They're going to pass through the spandhas that she presides over as Mahamaya. Then they pass through the spandha that shows that the realm of Maya has kicked in. Do you remember the origin of Maya in the 12 spandhas of Shaivism last week? We looked at that level of tattva, where Maya originates. That's a very high level where the material substances of the world have their origin. And then it's going to take a long time for them to trickle down to solid objects. But they actually start as thought, and when it starts the Word is with God, the Word was God, and so forth. So God here would mean Shiva and Shakti, polarized as a bindu. Out of a seed, everything comes. Out of a word, everything proceeds. Out of a thought, everything manifests. That's a good mantra right there, to keep the presence of Kamakala with you as you sport in the body, rather than suffer in it. As you express yourself, rather than get hypnotized in it. So you can always remain free and cast it off in a meditation or in deep sleep or at any other time that you're called upon or need to do it. So knowing the difference between thought or existence and non-thought or non-existence is very important, because when you do away with your thoughts, that's not an emptiness that's vacant and void, nihilistic and so forth. You want to annihilate the idea of nihilism, I used to say, because that's only a word that somebody thought of, and you want to avoid the void because somebody saw the void, which was an empty space, but they were seeing it. So they came back and they gave it a word, and they had a concept for it. So they told it to others, and others all of a sudden developed knowledge of the void. And when they came upon it, said, well, let's avoid that. Avoid. See, anytime you put the letter A in front of a Sanskrit word, it means its opposite. Like today someone wrote me and said, happy a Sunday. A Sunday. So a sun, there's no sun today. It's all dreary and gray and rainy. So it's the opposite of sun, you see. So, and it happens to be Sunday too. So if you were to be able to see the opposite of everything and know it as a philosophical principle, then you would be well equipped to go inside of yourself and encounter anything, even emptiness, without the slightest bit of fear and without the slightest bit of doubt about your true nature. Speaking about, again, the Amrita Bindu Upanishad, which I will teach Sunday after next in San Francisco. I hope you'll all be on hand for that, because that has some choice bits of wisdom to add to this. The other principle there to Viveka Gyan is achieves an end to rounds of birth and death. So at that dotted line level, this Granthi, we might call it, this level, a person who gets Viveka Gyan also achieves the destruction, or it puts an end to the rounds of birth and death in ignorance. Remember, sometimes we say that Buddhism and Hinduism seem, Vedanta and so forth, they seem like they want you up and out of the body, and that the body's no good, the world's no good, and so forth. A point can be made for that, depending on what guna is controlling your mind at any given time, what mood you're in, that is. But more than that, philosophically, you'd have to say that if you're aware and you have intelligence, then whether you're in the body or not makes no never mind to them or to you. You can be embodied or disembodied, and you still have that same intelligence, but it's going to be based on the fact that you can distinguish between existence and non-existence, or form and formlessness, or thought and non-thought, or vrittis and avrittis. Or if you want to put it in the father of yoga's way of saying, between klista vrittis and aklista vrittis, positive and negative. Well, the negative starts to kick in here, and when the realm of Maya is forgotten and beings find themselves under the spell of Maya, believing dualities to be in charge. Dualities like birth and death, virtue and vice, pleasure and pain, virtue, even embodiment and disembodiment, bondage and liberation. All of these dualities kick in and seem to be the stuff of reality to people. And some of these they won't encounter. They'll purposefully set them off, brush them under the carpet. Others they won't be able to avoid, so they'll develop ways of dealing with them, like pleasure and pain. And the best way, of course, dealing with all of them is to know Shiva and Shakti as being one. Because here Shiva and Shakti have become so much two that they've fallen into a level of a spell. Yeah. What's static to you is invisible and what's dynamic to you is material. And that's what happens here to people's minds. They're not seeing the inner nature of those things, so they fall out of higher consciousness. You can see some of the results of that. They call that the spell of Maya. So when you're in that, you can see worldly talk and subjects, Prakriti, it's all speaking about gross matter, the gross world of matter only. That's all that's on their minds. And if you frequent worldly people or people of the world, you'll find out that they'll talk about everything but divine reality. And this will be the one substance in their sandwich that's completely missing. They can even mention God, religion, and so forth, and at the same time mention the doings of their job, their preoccupation with their job and so forth, as if neither of them has any meaning whatsoever. They're just words. So those are called worldly talks and subjects. That's the lowest grade of the word that you can come upon. So Sri Ramakrishna used to say, I wish my disciples would come to me because my ears are burning with the talk of worldly people. So everywhere he went, and this was in India in the 1800s, at the temple he was presiding over, he would meet people, Hindus, who were burning his ears with words of worldliness. So it happens in all cultures at all times in this world of, or this old waddled, as we were saying, if you want to put a Bengali accent on it, this old waddled. So this old world is full of those kinds of people that are speaking low-grade mantras. If they stepped up a grade, low-grade mantras would be Maya, or the universe of principles and tattvas. Then they start getting interested in water. Let's see, I think I'll be an oceanographer. They get interested in fire. I'm going to join the fire department, or I'm going to study forest fires. So they'll get concentrated on one of the tattvas, or one of the, what we would call these vibratory tattvas, to the exclusion of all the others. And they'll just focus on that. That will be their occupation. That will be what they'll be doing all their life, and they'll cause an impression in their mind. So if they're thinking of law their whole lifetime, it's probably pretty likely that they're going to be born in a family of lawyers many times, or scientists, or so forth and so on. And of course, an overall covering of that would be in the world of materials, matter. They'll be materialists again and again. As I just said, they'll begin to think the world is real because that's where their mind is concentrating on matter. If they concentrate on religion, if they concentrate on mysticism, if they concentrate on metaphysics, if they concentrate on transphysical things, philosophy and spirituality, then there's much more of a chance, of course, that they're going to work their way out of the spell of Maya and see the inherent oneness in everything. About that time, Kamakala would suggest itself to them, and that's moving back up the chart. They would move from this low-grade mantra to Shakti mantra. Shakti mantra means that they meet a teacher who has a powerful word for them. I have something to give you. Like Sri Aurobindo met his guru on a train, and he knew his guru for about 2 hours. Never saw him again. And so his guru, I think his name was Bhaskar Lila, or Bhaskar, I think Bhaskar, not Bhaskar Ananda, but Bhaskar Lila, saw his guru, saw this young man who was very astute, and talked with him and everything. He said, "Have you been initiated yet?" Sri Aurobindo said, "No." He said, "Well, here, let me give you the mantra." So he gave him, "I have something for you, very powerful." So he gave him the mantra and initiated Sri Aurobindo right there on the moving train, which was Shakti, and the landscape lying under it was Shiva, of course. And then that was the only time he ever met his guru, but he got the mantra given to him in sacred ceremony right there as a transmission of seed into this fertile ground. Shiva and Shakti again. So there it was, present in his life and ready when he was needful of it. And the guru came with the mantra and gave it. So you're talking about this level of Shakti mantra being the greatest boon in a person's life, at least a person on this level of existence, which we call the earth, or the earth plane. You can see there it says, that's the universe of subtle principles they're giving you. Before that, or unless you penetrate through it to get vivek again, you're not going to see anything but physical principles, and you'll get, as we just said, or I just described, you'll get probably concentrated on one of them. Or, and that's probably a step, or you'll just sort of amorphously amass everything together and not really see the meaning of it. And you may have a job or a vocation and so forth, but it doesn't really have any meaning to you, and you don't know where it came from or what its origin is. So the seeker will graduate deeper. That yearning that Sri Ramakrishna talks about will awaken in them. And then they penetrate through and they get vivek gyan, and then they're qualified to be able to realize the true self above the ego. And then awareness of Shiva and Shakti comes to them with all of its beautiful blessings there. And then beyond that, of course, the bindu, you might say that's rising to the sixth level of consciousness. That's called Agya Chakra here. And that opens, and they begin to see inner worlds and so forth. So all of this has inward ascension, as sometimes we call it, inward ascension. You're going inward, and you're also going higher, in higher spheres of consciousness, higher spandas, or higher tattvas. And besides just the experience that you get, kama, the bliss out of it, you also come to know the non-self and know the self and get introduced to Shiva and Shakti as the highest principle in Tantra, Paramasiva, Parashakti as one. That would be the form of nirvana, nirvikalpa, or nirbija. Nir also always means made extinct or wiped away, which is the highest experience, where the soul is one with Brahman. Jiva is Shiva, is how they would say it in Tantra. I heard my teacher say that quite a bit in his talks. Jiva is Shiva. So, Maya matramidam dvaita advaita paramataha. Those who don't know the oneness of existence, they get stuck in Maya. Maya matramidam dvaita advaita. They get stuck in dualism, dvaita, and they don't know Advaita. Dvaita advaita paramataha, the supreme, parama. So that is a quick run-through of a very profound subject, something for you to take home with your notes and shravana, manana, yukti, reason about and think about in your mind, probably even with eyes open. You can look around and then begin to see how the door and its sliding motion, the candle and its burning power, or the candle in a windowless place where the two just look the same. You see Shiva and Shakti existing in everything, like the gong and striking it. Sitting there, static, peaceful, and someone strikes it and a vibration comes out of it. And then the vibration seems to dissipate in the air, but actually it's just in the potential of the bell to cause sound. And all she has to do is come and strike it again, or all you have to do is strike it and be conscious of the fact that Shiva and Shakti are being initiated by your very actions, by your very thoughts, by your very deeds. And then the sound of a bell will be sacred to you, rather than just, it's time to go to church again. Or, it's time to eat, Pavlov's dog. See? So, there's a difference in consciousness. In the remaining time of this half, we can at least start into this, because it does broach the subject of mantra, which is a very powerful subject. And this is how the mind gets transformed by mantra practice. So you can see here's mantra practice kicking in, and how Vivekagyan and Mahamaya and Kamakala and the Trikona and all of that is a way of expressing the soul in its inward ascension phase, moving levels of consciousness back to its source. You say from chit to achit, or from vibration to non-vibration. So in the same way here, starting right there at Shakti Mantra, here's a process of how the seers talk about the mind of a human being who comes upon the mantra, experiences transformation. It might come upon you without you even knowing it. I was writing an article for the Nectar of Non-Dual Truth the other day, the issue that's coming out, and said in there that the seated samadhis that people have, called wisdom samadhis, sometimes people don't know they've had them until years later. So you might want to wake up and account for the fact of what you know to be true after, say, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 70 years, like my teacher, of meditating and contemplating these great Dharma teachings, and then expressing them to others. Wake up and account for all of that in the time that you've been involved in it, and count it to be the precious knowledge. The hen's teeth, those experiences that come that are decidedly and irrevocably spiritual experiences that cannot be denied. A lot of this happens in this universal practice called mantra. This is another chart. It would be nice to start from the top down so you can see the original principles. Now, this bindu here, did I have it here? Bindu here is called ordinary mind. And this bindu here is called bodha manaha, intelligent mind, after it's been transformed. So the ordinary mind is going to be subjected to Shiva and Shakti as tattvagyan and as upasana. So basically that's a form of Shiva and Shakti too. Knowledge of all principles is Shiva's business, and the purified mind that worships is Shakti's business. So one of them is Gyan and one of them is Bhakti, if you want to say. It's like the two yogas are right there, and they're playing together as two wings of the bird, as my teacher often said. Bird can't get off the ground without two wings. So you have tattvagyan and upasana dhyan. That is the knowledge of all the principles that have come out of you, and the purified mind that worships them, that sees them. A good word in English is deifies them. So my teacher, who was a monk, used to say, renunciation is not condemnation, it's deification. So even as a monk who was jnana-oriented and loved the formless, he was still teaching the Dharma to people in form, and he knew that people could make more progress spiritually if they deified the things that they were dealing with. The situations in their mind, the karmas that were there, the objects that they were responsible for, the wealth that came to them, whatever level you looked at, if he knew that if they deified it, that they would be much more able to not get caught in the spell of it. There's a beautiful thing that Swami Bhuteshananda said that I read recently in this beautiful article that he wrote. He was a president of the Ramakrishna order few decades ago, and he said, I've heard people, and he's talking about both Hindus and Americans, I've heard people tell their children who are spiritually oriented, don't think about that now, think about that later. And wait till you grow up, then think about spirituality. And then he said, but these parents, I noticed, that were telling them to do that, they didn't think about spirituality later. There they were giving the advice, and they were still running after material things. So what a profound thing to say, and actually kind of telling on both Hindu and American culture, or the people of the world today, is that you would see your spiritual orientation in your children, and say, oh, don't think about that right now. I mean, I had this happen to me with my parents. And don't think about that right now, you can think about that later. Sort of a concession, like, oh, you can get to that later, but enjoy the world right now. But then flash ahead to the very parents that are telling them this, they themselves are caught in Maya. They could have thought about God later, but they didn't. So what kind of advice is that to give your children whose starting off on a right footing. So I thought that was just one of the most simply profound things I'd read in a long time. So you should take your children who have spiritual orientation and say, wow, here's a really great possibility here. At a young age, you can transcend the position I'm in right now. I'm not thinking about God hardly ever, even by accident. But look at you. You have, here, let me guide you and help you. Bring out this samskara of spirituality that you started to develop in a previous lifetime and let it mature so you can get free. Then come back and help me. So the worldly parent would say, grow up, get wealthy, and then come back and take care of me in my old age. But what good would that do? You'd both still be caught in Maya, in wealth and so forth. You should say, get realized, then come back and help me out of this mess I got myself in which I gave birth to you. The spell of Maya. So actually recognition is one of the things that you're going to, pratyabhikya they call it. Recognition is one of the things you're going to have to become aware of and utilize. It's right there at the Viveka Gyan level. If you can recognize the position you're in, then you're far better off than if you had never recognized it at all, even if you don't do anything to get out of it. I recognize now that I'm in Maya, so I've heard people say that. Swami Vivekananda heard people say that to him in India. Oh, Swamiji, I know my inner nature is pure and indivisible, and I know I haven't realized that yet. I have all these karmas in the way. I can't realize it in this lifetime. And Swami Vivekananda would say, blast your karmas, don't think that way. You can realize it here and now, and since you recognize it, this is the time to do it. In another lifetime, you may be born not in recognition of it, not even know you're bound, not even know that there's such a thing as freedom on the spiritual level. Moksha, mukti, kaivalya, nirvikalpa, those things won't occur to you next lifetime. They'll be buried in some cycle that you had in your mind. But now you're aware of it. This is where they've come to the forefront. Now is the time to be about doing it. Holy Mother used to say that too. She said pretty much the same thing as Swami Bhuteshananda I just quoted. Basically, people say, she said, you should be up and doing right now. Everything you want to do, pilgrimage, fasting, spiritual exercises, you should do those right now, because you won't have the energy to do them later when you're old. And then there'll be unrealized desires in you, and that's not a good thing. The only good part about that is that maybe you might return into your next body with those unrealized desires and decide to do something about them. If she gives you her Icha Shakti power, see, if you have worshipped her, if you had deified Shakti and everything, then she might become graciously inclined and bestow that in you in the next lifetime. It's all by the grace of God, by love of God, that all of this occurs in you. But then you have to practice to be qualified for that. So a preamble to this chart then, Tattva Gyan and Upasana Dhyan, two very powerful things on either side is potential of that ordinary mind. Now you see, come down a little and you see the objective and the subjective. The objective is Sthula, the gross body, and the subjective is Sukshma, the subtle body. This is the first thing, and it reminds me of the 7 stages of knowledge we looked at the retreat a couple weeks ago, and the 14 levels of jnana and ajnana bhumikas we looked at our retreat, that shows how a soul climbs out slowly out of ignorance and gets to knowledge and then gets to realization. It's a very powerful chart. And so one of the points in there is that the being actually thinks about a distinction in his mind. Oh, I see, that's the waking state and this is the dream state. Or, oh, I see, that's my ignorance and this is higher knowledge. It's Viveka Gyan in action. And when it happens to the being, like we just said, then it's to be acted upon. So this is where you become aware of that. About that time, the teacher is headed your way to give you something. give you something very powerful. I have something to inject into you. My teacher used to say that. The West needs an injection of Brahmagyan. See, it would be like Vivekagyan. And I'm here to give it to them. So if you get there, he's got this big needle, invisible needle, filled with the serum of jnanam, and he's going to inject you with that so that you can begin the process of awakening. So one of the first things would happen is, I see there's the objective and the subjective. There's the gross and the subtle. And I'm not thinking enough about the subtle. Sukshma. Ati sukshma. You see the gross, subtle, and then ati sukshma means the subtlemost of the subtle. If you could think about Brahman as contrary as that may seem, because Brahman is not a thought, yet you can get to it by a thought, by a higher thought, then you'd be concentrating on the ati sukshma. Anaranian, the subtlemost of the subtle. See, this is where these Sanskrit words pop into my mind and inspire me very much. Because these are things that, of course, I've done and put into action, and they've fructified in me. So now, when they occur to me, it comes on the level of insight, not on the level of curiosity. So I know that if people receive this as an injection, as a transmission, that they too will have that experience over time if they persevere and keep up the practice. Well, the next thing it would come would be initiation, diksha. Now, after the first half is over, which is a few minutes, I'll show you what diksha is about. There are many forms of diksha, and probably the most common, but yet common not meaning ordinary, but the most prevalent of all dikshas is mantra diksha. You can rely on mantra diksha. Shaktipat diksha, for instance, there's some questionable things about that. People misusing power and so forth. Hitting you with a peacock feather or whatever it is they do, waving a crystal in front of you, or laying on of hands, that kind of thing, by a relatively unawakened person to another unawakened person is not going to be any profound solution for you. In fact, it'll come with a mixed bag effect upon you. So what you want is initiation from a master, somebody who's gotten a mantra from his teacher and who's used it and has realized something by that mantra. That's really important to say out loud in the physical atmosphere here in the West in today's day and age. That diksha will come in the form of a great teacher who has practiced mantra. On the other side you see that. Remember, we're seeing sides here. On the Tattva Gyan level you're getting the initiation. On the Upasana Gyan level you're getting guidance from the Guru and Shastras. That is the teacher in the scriptures. So these are things to both deify and to practice, to realize. After that, then you see what needs to happen when you get the mantra. There's a falling off point here, because I've seen, they're called thieves in the night. People who take the mantra from the Guru and don't do anything with it. So they run away with it. The good part of that is that you have a seed somewhere in you. And in some lifetime, it will get watered. But the negative side of that is you put off your realization, your bliss, your freedom, your freedom from suffering even, because you don't actually practice the mantra you've been given. So you see that's here. Repetition that's called nidrabhanga. You need to repeat the mantra over and over again. If it's just like a parrot in the beginning, so be it. Because something will happen from that. But basically it'd be better if you put it together with vitalization of the mantra. That's called mantra chaitanya. Chaitanya ho, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, and he would hit you on the head with his hand or something. That's this image in this picture, you see. He's tapping someone on the head, like Narendra, to give them a transmission. Chaitanya ho means, may your consciousness be awakened. So the great awakener is this power word that you've been given, this bijam. And it's a seed that out here in the form of the word that corresponds with the first word you ever heard before you were embodied. The outside and the inside, the objective, the subjective, the gross and the subtle. and you just made the connection, by being given the mantra, the two fused all of a sudden. And all of a sudden you're practicing, you're concentrating. Mantrartha bhavana. You're having actually a kind of bhavana or mood, a samadhi of concentration. That's what I just mentioned. You're having a concentration samadhi. I'd say that people got interested in a subject in school and they really loved that subject and they got into it like a painter or electrician or whatever. And they just studied it so deeply that they were in samadhi when they did that. But they didn't apply it anywhere else, so the samadhi was limited just to that one thing that they knew. And the samadhi didn't then spread, to other things. Realized that same power that was concentration could be applied to other things. When I went to my teacher, he told me actually, "Oh, you're a musician, you've learned how to concentrate. This path should not be difficult for you. Just use that same concentration that you used to play the cello. Hours of practice, sometimes 8 hours a day I used to play the cello when I was in high school and college. Use that same power of concentration and put it on the Vedanta. So if you've learned how to concentrate in anything and you have the desire, the will, the vichikirsa, the desire for freedom, or call it mumukshutvam, then you can take that power of concentration and place it on a high philosophy or a high-minded system and reap the rewards of it. Get the fruits of spiritual life. By thy fruits thou shalt know them." So those are the concentrated people. We admire them in any field or walk of life that they appear in. But here it's going to be leading towards enlightenment. And that's incomparable attainment. Incomparable. I think right there is a good place to break for our second half coming. We'll take it up right there because you can see how this was maybe a little bit abstruse, but this is actually more hands-on, how to use a mantra and how it's going to work its way into your thinking process and have its beautiful transformation there. So we'll pick it up right there at a beautiful word, concentration, or dharana in yoga, when we come back in 15 minutes. Thank you for your kind attentions. Welcome back to the second half of the second and final class on the study and worship of Shiva and Shakti. Just like the Vedantic axioms, the Advaita Vedanta, non-duality, the 8 limbs of yoga, the 24 cosmic principles of Samkhya and the 12 spandhas of Shaivism, we'd like to have people be worshipping and studying Shiva and Shakti. These aforementioned darshanas and their systems are actually less loving and less compassionate to our minds than the study of Shiva and Shakti. Maybe that's a problem for some people who have difficulty with devotion and ritual and so forth, but the reverence that needs to be instilled back into everything is very important to the Tantricist. And of course there is a kind of quote-unquote left-handed Tantra that Sri Ramakrishna pushed aside and showed us how to do it. And then the more traditional tantric path that in its originality was very profound and very deep, and as I said, one of the great streams of India. So it's working with personality, but it's working with divine personality, and that's a filling element in the sandwich we were talking about that would be nice to include in everything. So the study of Shiva and Shakti will accomplish that for us. It'll moisten the whole thing and make it much more digestible, much more beneficial. And so when you speak about Tantra and its rituals, sometimes that can even be taught without teaching Shiva and Shakti element in it. The divine couple would be one way of saying that, but also just static and the dynamic. If you want to avoid religion and even philosophy and just present it to people as a sort of ideology that could help them understand, then once they get into it themselves, they'll feel the warmth, they'll feel the vibration, they'll feel the emanation, they'll feel the presence. Like I said, Sri Ramakrishna is saying, once, as long as I consciousness is still there in people, then they need to include these more devotional elements into their spiritual life. Sri Ramakrishna used to even say that the machine runs fine, but if the mechanic doesn't come and add oil in every once in a while, it seizes up and doesn't run anymore, gets destroyed. So that oil that he adds in, Sri Ramakrishna said, is bhakti, is devotion, and it keeps this machine of jnanam that should be running, that is a philosophical mentation that people should do, the study of it, running well. And so the worship and the study has to go together, the bhakti and the jnanam, the upasana jnana and the tattva jnana, all has to be included together to get a fuller picture. Of course, the 4 yogas would round that all out, add meditation and then selfless action, and you've got what Swami Vivekananda said, the new religion of this age, having all 4 sides of it. So a good start for people would be then the study and worship of Shiva and Shakti as living presences in these, in the mind and heart of human beings. And we said concentration is going to be one of the things that is a pivotal point in transforming the ordinary mind to bodhi manaha, to the intelligent mind, the inherently intelligent mind. Intelligence isn't something that grows in you, just like consciousness isn't something that grows. It's something that's inherent in your true nature and that you come upon, or in some cases people stumble upon, knowingly, by the grace of the mother or by circumstance, whatever the case may be. It's already inherent in you, or you wouldn't recognize it when you came across it. It's one of the telling and beneficial teachings of Indian darshana. So in this case, concentration is a very pivotal point. And to look back, we saw that we vitalized a mantra by watering it with the seeds of our devotion, Sri Ramakrishna used to say. And it was given to us by a guru, and we practiced it after we got initiation from the guru. So we're backing up now, you see. And then beyond that, we find ourselves back to an ordinary mind that really didn't separate out, didn't have viveka gyan to separate the wheat from the chaff, or separate the oil from the sesame seed. To get to the subtle, or the subjective, and know it to be transcendent of the objective, or the object itself. So we worked our way up to concentration. This is what mantra does, and this is the process of transformation of mind according to the Tantrasists, who have watched mantra have its beneficial effect on people for millennia. Tantra is a very ancient. The only reason I think that it hasn't been added into as a darshana, into India's 6 traditional darshanas, is that it was too vast to be systematized. We kind of wonder at Patanjali, appearing in 140 AD, that he was able to systematize yoga into 8 limbs. Or before that, Buddha coming forth the 37 limbs of enlightenment and the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. Those were masterminds of philosophy, religion, and consciousness itself, who were able to sit and in one lifetime envision this and bring it out from hiding and expose it to people, so that for hundreds and hundreds of years after that, people would be moving forward, inward, that means, in their spiritual life, and gaining benefit and having conscious lives, living dharmic lives. It's a wonder then, but Tantra, no one ever came along and said, well, I'll take all that field and systematize it now. It just has to be called one of these streams that's like an untamable river. And yes, it had its swamps and its problems along the way. Why concentrate on those when this vast waterway is spreading itself all the time through people's minds and hearts, through all the chakras, and that at least half of what people are doing are based in worship and ritual and love of deities. And it hurts a lot to see this discounted in today's age, and that will happen in a materialistic culture. They'll discount the divine personality just because personality itself, ego, has gotten a bad rap in other systems. We can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. So we've got to keep what's essential. And so in Tantra, in the same way, if the West is all involved in just these left-hand aspects that are detrimental and not good examples of what Tantra really is, then we have to just turn away from those and represent these higher levels of Tantra that are time-tested and that really have to do with worship of our very self and its 2 aspects, the static and the dynamic. It's really not much different than saying, I have chit and achit, you see, or I have consciousness and I have emptiness in me. If the form is what causes people the rift, the problem, then they have to deify that form. That's all. And include it. There has to be inclusion, incorporation, integration, synthesis, conjunction. There's lots of good words in English. Integration. It has to be done not only with the 4 yogas, but it has to be done with these elements of devotion and so forth. Otherwise, what's the use of your compassion if you don't have this devotion? And love itself. So here we came to the ordinary mind has really already received its first quota of boon from mantra by just becoming concentrated. It had to have a guru and an initiation to do that. The guru had to be wise and have the 4 qualifications of a guru. You know what those are. We've studied them before here online and in YouTube classes. I've left behind those teachings of Shankara. It must be free of desire, must be able to deliver to you the essential teachings of philosophy with no other desire than for you to get enlightened, and that guru must live a pure, unostentatious life and also be a knower of Brahman. Those 4 things are what qualifies a guru to teach you and to give you a mantra. If you don't see those there, probably better start looking for a guru that can transmit the mantra to you without admixtures. I mean, I've heard stories of people hearing these teachings and then pick up a hitchhiker, and the hitchhiker says, "Oh, I can give you initiation." A hitchhiker giving you initiation. Turns out on the beach they go to some kirtan dance, you see. "Here, I'll give you initiation on the beach." "Well, who are you?" "Oh, well, I'm a gas station attendant down the road. I have a job." "So you're going to get initiation from an ordinary workman? You take the sacred mantra, you'll probably start thinking of pumping gas in your dreams a couple of weeks later. You'll get whatever was in that person will get transmitted to you in the mantra." Like somebody wanted to learn the Gita once, Sri Ramakrishna said. So he asked his friend, "I want to learn the Gita." "Oh, it's a good, noble thought." So his friend said, "Well, I have somebody who is in my neighborhood who teaches the Gita, but right now he's busy farming his field. See, when he's done with that, he can teach you the Gita." So they met the next day, and his friend, he said, "Do you want to have me ask that guy?" He said, No, I'll start thinking about farming and bullocks and plowshares and things. See if I get mantra from him. I want someone who just concentrates only on the Gita to teach me the Gita. So that purity of transmission is going to be there. Somebody who concentrates full time as a Dharma teacher, and that's their main emphasis, not someone off the street or someone who doesn't have that qualification, and particularly somebody who's practiced the mantra over time and has gotten it from a line of succession called Guru Parampara. Parampara! See, it sounds like a blast of trumpets. Somebody who's got the initiation from their teacher, who got it from their teacher, and so forth. That's a mantra you can rely upon to transform your mind. So this is very important. Especially the Westerners need to sit up and listen to this and take it seriously and give up this romance that they have with spurious teachers and with people who are pretending to be teachers, who really are into occult powers, or they're into money, or they're into various other things. And they're writing famous books, you see, and people are flocking to them by the millions. No. You get a real mantra from a teacher who's probably unknown to most of the world. And if that's the way it is, that's the better. They're not pulling any wool over your eyes. They know Brahman. They concentrate on the scriptures and they transmit those. They live a pure life and they're free of desire for you, except that you get enlightenment. That's their only desire. Can't be put any clearer than that for a person whom you want to give you a powerful seed like that. They must have realized it inside of their own meditations and have used it, probably for lifetimes, if not for a lifetime. So with that said, you can see that, and this is also a truth of this, that people who get many mantras from many gurus, they're not concentrated. You see it all the time. They're like flies flitting from one thing to another. One guru to another, one path to another, one system to another, and falling back into lighting on something not so nice. Flies light on flowers, they also light on filth, Sri Ramakrishna said. So the lack of concentration in them after they've already gotten, what to speak of one mantra, but 6 mantras from 6 different teachers, is telling and obvious. So that has to be discriminated, Viveka Gyan. They call that Guru Viveka and Aguru Viveka. That is basically the guru that's discriminating and the guru that's non-discriminating. You have to be discriminating and avoid non-discrimination too when you look at a teacher who's going to transmit you a vibration from his or her own mind and heart. You see, it has to be pure. You have to have realized it and reached a certain level of purity. Well, here's what happens. And I would say that gas station attendant that wanted to give you a mantra that you picked up, who's hitchhiking alongside the road, probably doesn't know this. That the mantra that he's given has 4 quarters. And one of them is called Vaikari, which happens also to be the 4th stage of the word in that system. It's the gross, it's the outside. So that's what the Guru is giving you. He's giving you the words. They're powerful words. They're based in his own realization. Sometimes in people who are exceptionally qualified and ready, they'll have an immediate profound effect. And the mantra will take people deep right away. They'll get a vision of the deity to whom the mantra is associated with. Holy Mother used to say that. Said, Sri Ramakrishna taught me all the mantras and how to connect them to the deities. So this is esoteric knowledge that most people wouldn't have who are assuming to share with you what they know about mantra. These are facts about mantra. And probably the most beautiful and beneficial and powerful of all facts is that this connected to the Tripura Sundari, the triple aspect of the mother. So this is external quarter part of the mantra as opposed to the hidden three parts of the mantra on either side of the page here. Sometimes we can even sing about that when we sing something to her like this. Japaharini Shuddharupini Saraswati Namostute Japavahini Krishna Darshini Vagishwari Namostute Purnadayini Sarva Mokshini Mahavijya Namostute Brahma Shristini Vishnu Stitini Saraswati Namostute. And it rolls on and on like that. Parashakti, Prema Bhakti, Vidyamayi Namostute. Jai Maheshwari, Sharadeshwari, Jagadishwari Namostute. Beautiful words of the Shakti, all names of her, with profound meanings. Brahma Shakti, she's Sarva Mukti, she's Vidya Swarupa, she's Shukla Padmini, she's Japa Siddhini, she's Shardamani. On and on it rolls, these beautiful words of the Mahashakti. And she's hidden in the mantra in 4 ways. Really, particularly 3 ways. Who knows that? Except the Guru who's been schooled in India and who's passed it along in a line of succession. A serious practitioner who became an adept, who then became a master, and came from a line of past masters. They know it. They can give this knowledge and they can make you believe in it and understand it. Others can't do that. And people who are giving it for power or selling it for $1,000 a mantra and so forth, they're just really doing it such an inservice, such an injustice. Spirituality itself gets ruined by selling of the mantra and so forth. It's transmitted from one loving heart to another loving heart. And so it's precious. Holy Mother, who was my teacher's teacher, Swami Sheshananda's teacher, both said in their lifetimes that the mantra was the most precious thing they'd ever given anyone. Then I had to say that to my students when I gave it to them after Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, bliss be upon him, gave it to me. So then I have to try and transmit it to people, you see, and tell them, this is the most precious thing you'll ever get. Water this with the seeds of your devotion. And if the Dharma doesn't make sense to you, if you fall out, if the gunas hit a bad cycle, if your karmas come rushing back at you in one lifetime, which is actually a good thing because then you can see them and deal with them, use the mantra all the time, no matter what. That's the one thing that will save you in the stormy ocean of relative existence. It'll help you navigate those waves of suffering, gunas, karma, and whatever else can come your way. It's so precious, the mantra, most precious. If you can understand the Dharma, that's deeper. So you're putting together that love and that worship with this jnanam. That's Upasana Jnana and and tattva gyan. So beautiful teachings about this come even in song. Japaharini, perfect in the mantra, Shuddha Rupini, is the very form of faith in God, is Saraswati, the goddess of the word. Japavahini, she's the vehicle that's in the mantra. That is, when you do the japa, she's the vehicle itself, see. So she's inside the mantra. The word is inside of, the mother is inside of the word as its power. See, we sing that in other ways too. Mono boli bhajakali icha hoi torjaya chari guru data moha mantra divaneshi japakari mono boli bhajakali. Oh, playful mind doesn't always know what's best for itself. It just plays unconsciously. Meditate on the mystery of Mother Kali, using any method of worship you please, or simply breathe day and night her holy mantra as the living seed of transforming power planted by the Guru in your heart. Could it be expressed any better? The art of mantra. The art of mantra is shared by all other four yogas. Mantra yoga could be a fifth yoga. Would be very easy for someone to systematize that. I mean, I put out some 8 or 12 charts on mantra just from what I gathered together from the scriptures and what I experienced myself by it and what I saw our founder, Lex Hixon, experiencing by the practice of mantra. So it's very easy to make it into its own system. Of course, devotion in it, bhakti, and jnanam in it, what the mantra means, is going to be what the Tantrasists would want you to do, to have both in it. The two who are one are inside of it. He goes on to sing, Jato shona karne pute, shabe mayur mantra bote, kali panchi shaktavarna moyi, varne varne namadore. Holy Bhajakali, Icha hoi torjaya chari, Guru data moha mantra, divaneshi japakori, Mono Holy Bhajakali. Sing that 3 times. Mono Holy Bhajakali. One more time. Mono Holy Bhajakali. So he says, all sounds you hear are her natural mantras, repeating spontaneously as the whole world worships her. Goddess Kali constitutes the letters of every alphabet, and each letter secretly bears the flower of her name. As beautiful devotional songs of India goes, this one by Ramprasad is probably the best to explain what the practitioner knows about using or utilizing japa practice or mantra. So basically you see here, you need to know about the 4 quarters of the word, or the 4 aspects of the mantra. 1, Vaikari, the outer. The Guru gave you that. But he says, or he may not tell you, he might let you discover it on your own, that the Tripura Sundari, the triple form of the goddess, exists in the mantra, hidden there in 3 parts. So as you use the mantra, you open 3 doors. She's the goddess at each one of those, admitting you into deeper and deeper levels of the flower of her name, what the words mean in experiential terms, not just in repetitive terms outside, Vaikari. So, Vidanena mantro chacharanam. utterance of the mantra in 3 ways, they tell you. Basically, vachika, upamsu, and manasa. That is, you can say it audibly. If you go out in a field and you see a huge bull running at you, you probably want to say it audibly. If you're just wandering through the forest and you're lost, you can mutter it, upamsu. But the best of all, they say, is to do it silently in formal meditation, sitting just like this. So, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Or Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Jai Shri Ramakrishna. Swami Damodar Nanaji Maharaj, may bliss and peace be upon him, before he passed away last year, by giving his body into the sacred river voluntarily. He used to say that all the time. He was walking around everywhere saying, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Jai Shri Ramakrishna. So he'd teach you something like, oh, Shri Ramakrishna used to say that, somebody asked him once, how does Brahman reflect in all beings? How does Brahman become all beings? And Shri Ramakrishna said, well, just like that morning sun there is reflecting through all these dewdrops that appeared on leaves and flowers, just like that, Brahman reflects in all beings. Ingenious, you see. There's the eye open to see. By a physical representation, Shakti reveals the Shiva in it, the wisdom. So, in that way, meditating silently within yourself on the mantra will reveal these hidden truths to you. And it doesn't matter whether eyes are open or eyes are closed. You'll see that Shiva and Shakti manifesting in all things as a combination. And you'll also be able to discriminate between them. And if you want to visit the dynamic or visit the static, that's called sampragata samadhi, seated, and unseated samadhi, asampragyata, or nirvikalpa and savikalpa, or nirbija and sabija. There's different ways and different systems that they talk about seeing or feeling or knowing or experiencing Shiva and Shakti in different ways. So those 3 ways are how to practice. Like mantra chacharanam, you practice it that way, but be aware that she's waiting at each juncture of depth of consciousness to open a door to you. You have to have that kind of expectation, or maybe better, anticipation every time you do the japa, the repetition. That you have to think of the teacher, you have to think of the beads, the Rudraksha beads or whatever you're using, sandalwood or crystal. Then you have to think that the words I'm saying are invested with mother power, and you have to have love for Divine Mother and the deep desire, kamakala. You have to have that deep desire in time to come face to face with her and see her, see God in human form, and see God in subtle form, see Mother in all things. And with that combination of elements, you see, it all culminates in Bodha Manaha. Your mind gets intelligent. It gets its intelligence awakened. Bodha Manaha. It's a word for Lord Buddha. It took his own name after that kind of intelligence. There you see it. The Bhakti herself is there. One side you see, on all sides you see her. You see, I used to say that in wisdom's firmament, the moon of love is rising full, and love's flood tide in surging waves is flowing everywhere. O Lord, how beautiful you are, how full of bliss. Salutations unto thee. On every side stand saints and sages, like stars around the moon. The Lord, all merciful, joyously plays with them. Behold, the gates of paradise are open wide. Sri Ramakrishna used to love to sing that song. So did Naren, Swami Vivekananda. So there it is. The moon of love, you see, the ocean with waves surging everywhere. And on all sides are the children. Who are they? The rishis, the yogis, the sages, the siddhas, the paramahamsas, the mahatmas, the saints. They're all partaking of the bliss that's virtually flowing out of that flower of Vakdevi. Sometimes we sing about that too in different ways. Vani Saraswati Vakdevi Bhagavati Parvati Mampaye Vinapani Hamsavahini Vedanta Rupini Valayamam Vani Saraswati Vakdevi Bhagavati Parvati Mampaye. So she's Vani Saraswati Vakdevi. So there's the Vakdevi in which all these beings are dancing around. She's like a central pillar, and they're all these beautiful sparks of intelligence orbiting around her at a very high level of existence. Or Ramprasad, again, quoting from his beautiful songs, black, my mother Kali's hair. Black is the atmosphere around her. The black bee of my mind merges with the blackness of her hair and becomes one. So it's all blackness, you see, this radiant blackness that she is. If you put her in terms of Saraswati, she's all white. Shukla Devi, we just sang that. We want to see her in her other form, Kali, terrible. I see sometimes terrible is a good thing here, because she scares away all your weaknesses and all your limitations. And she's this deep, radiant, dark blackness of consciousness. So here you see Bodhi mind, or Bodhi manaha, and all those arrows reaching out to her children. And you can see by now this transformation of mind due to mantra practice has reached a kind of fruition. And beings are saying her name everywhere, like this song just said. All sounds you hear are her natural mantras. So when I sometimes laugh and say, when I was growing up with 4 siblings, 3 of them were violinists. You've never heard such a horrible sound as someone trying to learn the violin. Worse than the cello, which I had to learn because it's not so high and penetrating and scratchy, you see. So I had to bear that. So back then I should have known about this song. It said, all sounds you hear are her sacred mantras. So the horrible scratchings on an inept beginning violinist's bow and fingers would have seemed like Mother Kali's own wonderful words to me. So you need to do that with all sounds. And in fact, there are stories, like even Swami Vivekananda, Naren, the young Narendra, was meditating across the river from the Kali temple. He'd come to see Ramakrishna every once in a while, and the master would love to see him. But he complained to the master one day and said, oh, there's a jute mill right near my house, and the whistle goes off every once in a while. It's just, so loud, and everyone jumps. Even if they're used to it, they jump in surprise and shock. He says, I can't meditate because of that. And Sri Ramakrishna said, no, that's the mother's voice calling to you. You just have to think of it as that. And from that moment on, that sound never bothered Narendra in his meditations again. In fact, he said it helped me, because if my meditation was getting a little bit uncentered or not so high, all of a sudden Mother would call me, see. So he just totally turned it all around. And that's what mantra does. It takes you out of the spell of Maya into Mahamaya herself. You just have to be willing to be guided there. So this process is a kind of guidance. It can be looked at as a practice, but if you knew that she's waiting for you, like she waited for your guru, who put the words of her mantra into your heart, planted them there. He says here, the seeds, knowing that the whole world is spontaneously worshipping her by the sounds they make, like a baby crying. That's certainly an instance of somebody worshipping the mother, isn't it? Wanting the mother very deeply. So all sounds are her sacred mantras. Very beautiful, beautifully put. Now, what's the result of all this? What can it be? You come upon the antaryami. Antaryami seated in your heart. It's like the inner ruler immortal, seated in your heart is a nice way of saying that in English. Awareness of spiritual worlds would be another way of putting that. And that's, you say here, you see the arrow coming out is animated, chitta. So a lot of the Swamis used to tell us that. Sri Ramakrishna used to tell that to his direct disciples. It says you need to animate the chitta, sort of charge it up. So if your mind, your thoughts aren't charged up, then they're really not beneficial to you. They're not focused, they're not concentrated. So the mantra will help you get concentrated so you can animate the chitta. And now the chitta is thinking of what? Spiritual worlds. Before it was thinking of material worlds. Now it's animated, it's thinking of spiritual worlds. So that's how these two go together. The saints, seers, avadutas, maharishis, paramahamsas, siddhas, all of them began thinking differently because of the fructification of that mantra in their hearts. And they begin thinking about inner worlds and also about awareness of absolute reality. And they're thinking maybe this mantra, when it takes them to its highest peak, could actually act as a doorway into non-dual reality. I could actually have nirvana, or nirvikalpa, or the beatific vision of the indivisible, formless reality, called Brahman, Almighty Father, Allah, and by other beautiful names. That's really the bulk of this chart and the step-by-step process of how the mantra transforms the mind. The lower part of this chart is about ajapa, which is an interesting word. We said in the first half, you put an A in front of any word and it's the opposite. So what do they mean by anjapa? The spontaneous flow of the divine name. So there are some souls, and we saw this true of our own founder of SRV, Lexixon, whom when I saw him first get the mantra and use it, it was a protection for him, kept the family at bay. When you have families, they don't understand what you're doing sometimes. You might be the only spiritual being born in that family, or one of two maybe. So you're practicing the mantra in a sort of protection so that you'll have time to do it without the insinuations of worldly people, even if they're family. It's not just strangers that are getting in your way, your family's getting in your way of what you want to accomplish in this lifetime. They may be even in helping you get what you want, but they're not helping you get what you need. What you need is realization. And that's what you're after. So there's a natural, spontaneous repetition of the mantra going on with every breath. That's pretty much what a japa means. Every breath in and out is saying Mother's name. See? So I actually, with that idea in mind, when I go to sleep, most nights I will breathe in, I'll become aware of my breath, I'll breathe in and I'll say the mantra to Sri Ramakrishna. I'll breathe out and I'll say the mantra to Holy Mother. So, and then there's a suspended breath in between, of course. So I'm doing that, becoming aware that my breath means each one of those great deities, the avatar and the mantri avatar, see, as we like to sing sometimes. Parama Guru Siddha Yogi, Parama Guru Siddha Yogi, Aho Pranam, Namaskar, Paramahamsa, Shri Ramakrishna, Paramahamsa, Shri Ramakrishna, Matri Bhakta, Yugavatar. He's the Matri Bhakta. He's the devotee of the Divine Mother. He's the Yuga avatar. He's the Divine Mother Kali avatar of this age. Beautiful song written amongst hundreds of songs written for him while he was still living and just after he passed away. has never quite seen the likes of it in such a short time, that so many beings flocked to this incarnation of God. Not just a Paramahamsa, that is an authentic Paramahamsa, not a pretend Paramahamsa, but also, as well as his Paramahamsahood, he was the avatar of the age. Now 5 million or more people found that out on this plane of existence and are reciting his mantra every night. So you want to join them? Then there's 2 ways you can do it. Just breathe, because every time you do, you're saying his name and her name, his name and her name. Or you can consciously transform your mind by using it and be free. Japa Siddhini, we just talked. She's perfect in the practice of japa. That is, your divine mother of the universe that you took initiation into, Sri Sharda Devi, the Holy Mother, gave you the mantra of Kali, the Kali avatar. She gave you that mantra. And you should right now think what a marvelous boon that is, and I am actually realized as I say these words. Enlightenment is mine. Why do I keep putting it off? And if I look back in the process of my Vedantic practice, of my yogic practice, of my tantric practice, or of my study of the tattvas, or my Buddhist practice, or my Jain practice, my Christian practice, then we'll find this non-dual thread running through all of them is Mother's own body. She's the meaning in it all. And one only needs to invoke her, propitiate her. You can do it in worship and ritual, you can do it in the mantra, you can do it by studying the scriptures, because those scriptures are hers too. The wisdom words in the scriptures are filled with power to transform you. That is, your real you doesn't need transforming. That's the Atman. But your mind needs transforming so that it will realize itself to be the Atman. Ordinary mind, Bodhi mind, you figure it out. And look at people with ordinary minds, and then look at the saints and the seers, you figure it out. What happened? Did they just grow 2 horns? Is that why they're different? No, it all happened in an inner process. So what is the japa mantra? A spontaneous flow of the divine name. If you're conscious of it, then you'll be doing 240,000 repetitions of the mantra every night. And in the daytime, 480,000, see, because that's how many breaths you take in a 24-hour period, they say. So there you see some of these points to that. Hamsa mantra, in-breath, hum, out-breath, sa. 21,600 per day. I guess when I said 480,000, I was running. Anusandana, mental search of awareness for its intrinsic value. So you say the mantra, you realize that the in-breath and out-breath, but you also have to search awareness for its intrinsic value. Like an Eskimo would watch snow conditions, we like to say, because his life depends on it. So your spiritual life depends upon examining your consciousness day to day. Meditation that's the second best use for meditation. Holy Mother said, if you just watch your meditation every morning, you do it constantly for an hour, say every morning, you can see how your mind changed from the day before. Then you're not going to like change anymore. Change got a hold of me. How did that happen? There's been robbery in my house. See, one of the songs sings that. All my precious possessions, including my mantra, has been stolen. See, how did I let that happen? So I want to check that, keep the robbers out, and examine my consciousness every day and know that that's the inspection process. The mantra will reveal that to you. The mantra will keep you safe, like I said, protected, while you do this process. And after the protection, and I didn't finish that train of thought a few minutes ago, then it turns into bliss. We saw that in our founder, Lexikson. Finally, it's just happening spontaneously like this. You got the idea, you initiated it, you started the ball rolling, and then you just stood back and lived your life with the mantra informing and infusing everything. naturally. So, Pana apana, inhalation and exhalation become equal. So the two pranas you want to get, the in-breath and the out-breath, you equal them out. It means actually equal them out in time. So if I count my in-breath for 8 beats, that's called beginning level of breathing. 8 breaths in, 8 breaths held, 8 breaths out, beginning level of pranayama. But make sure that you're aware of the mother as prana and as breathing and so forth as you do this. Then, practice that for a while, then do 16 or 12. Increase, not too much, so that you don't imbalance the mind. That's intentionally evening out the breath so that, again, your mind gets the idea and then finally it's breathing that way all the time. You could get in a car accident. Other people are running around like chickens with their heads cut off, and you're breathing the same. Heart rate doesn't change, breathing doesn't change. Who would you like to help you at the scene of a car accident? Somebody who's crazy or somebody who's balanced? Because I saw this in my own life. Driving, a train hit a car, got out, people were crazy. Blood was everywhere and so forth, people were suffering. And I saw this one person just go to each person that was hurt and very quietly help them. And other people were just completely disarmed, didn't know what to do, screaming, "Call an ambulance!" And by the time an ambulance gets there, they bleed to death. So they were helping, you see. So this is very practical as well. It turns you into a balanced individual who is able to be of benefit to society in all ways, not just in emergency. So you get that idea, then you just become an ajapa master. Kundalini Shakti will then get aroused. She likes that. See, we know what arouses most people: money, fame, and other unsavory things. What arouses her? I'd like to know that. See, she gets aroused by a balanced mind. She gets aroused by somebody who got their intelligence back, especially once it was robbed. That's what excites her. Oh, look at that, an illumined soul, finally. So she'll go running, you see, to a person like that. Just like you'd go running to someone who loved you, rather than someone who didn't care for you. So Sri Ramakrishna also used to say that sometimes God is the attracting party, and the devotee gets attracted. But at other times, the devotee makes himself or herself into the attracting party, and God comes running to them. He used to say that all the time. So make yourself into the attracting party. I'm waiting for you now. I'm perfect. I'm intelligence. I have the mantra. I have the guru. I have the path. I have the knowledge. I have the dharma. I can sing about it. I can think about it. I can cogitate on it. Now where are you? Come to me. And attract what's inside you to yourself. By your own willpower, by your own sadhana. So Kundalini Shakti will love to come awaken in you. Your coil will uncurl, see, as they say in Kundalini Yoga. And she will come up that coil. Anahata, wondrous sounds are detected but ignored to concentrate on Om. This is very much of a yogic teaching in 8-limbed yoga, is that at certain levels of consciousness, like the heart, you see, that beings will become aware of that sound of Om, that hum of a million bees, as it were, inside of a trunk of a tree. You're the trunk and she's the bees, vibrating in there, humming, you see. If you become aware of that, then these wonderful sounds will be heard, but you ignore them. It's pretty much like getting hypnotized, isn't it? A spell of Maya. Spell of Maya, some of that will still be present as you rise out of old habits. It's not like this is just cut and dried. Oh, I'm free now. See? Has anyone ever experienced that? Show of hands. Oh, nobody? Okay. See, so it happens by stages that this rises in you. And when you reach one stage, residues of the final stage will not completely disappear. Just like, say, man got enlightened, but all of a sudden he dreams of silly things. So he's still got some karmas associated, some scars in the mind that are associated with old lifetimes or this past lifetime. And those are fast diminishing and fast dissolving because of the continued practice of bodhamana, of japa mantra. So, same here, when wondrous sounds present themselves, you should say, like the Amrita Bindu Upanishad, it's a mere sound. Like that, you see. It's a mere sound caused by Maya. So, you ignore that and you go to that trunk of bees that you want to see. And put yourself right in the thick of it and hum with pure conscious awareness. Penultimate step here, Shuddha Chaitanya. That means pure consciousness, of course. The thoughts begin to dissolve into pure mind. This is pretty much what I just said. All thoughts that are still carrying any residues, bijams, seeds, they're not going to germinate anymore once you roast them over the fire of jnanam. See? So non-germination is your penultimate goal. Then the thoughts aren't crowding in on you anymore, and you know chit and not chit together. So that dissolves into pure mind, Shuddha Chaitanya, or really, pure mind is pure consciousness, or enlightened mind is Buddha mind, or pure mind is God, is Brahman. Those are three different sentences, one by Tantra, one by Buddha, and one by Sri Ramakrishna. Seventh and final, Purnahatta. It's a very powerful word again in Tantra. The word Om transforms into conscious light, or Jyoti, and the realization, I am, dawns. I am that, I am, or everything dissolves, merges. So Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said this, mantra is that, the contemplation of which yields special knowledge of the universe, revealing it to be non-distinct from Brahman. In other words, the universe is full of Brahman. And this doesn't sound like Advaita Vedanta in some ways, but it's the neti-neti process you went through turns into this idea that Brahman has become everything. And you have this intense feeling of it, and therefore all turns into Brahman. Before that, it was dangerous to entertain something that powerful in your thoughts because you weren't qualified, you hadn't been purified yet. But once you have a pure mind, that makes perfect sense to you. Otherwise, it doesn't yield special knowledge of the universe, does it? It yields very ordinary knowledge of senses and sense objects, and lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, jealousy, greed, illusion, delusion, shame, fear, doubt. In other words, the six passions and the eight fetters are accompanying everything that you think about. But now the mind is free of all that. In fact, it's even free of the thoughts. Good or bad, klista or aklista. And so now it's sitting in its own innate purity. It's taking a bath in the waters of its own inherent purity. And saying, I am, I am, I am, over and over again. So you might say, in breath, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, out breath, Om Shri Sharda, in breath, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, out breath, Om Shri Sharda. Finally, enough of that. It just turns into, I am, I am, I am. I and my Father are one. Or, I am Buddha nature, or I am Atman, all abiding. Put it in any tradition, in any language, translates basically as the same experience. We call it non-duality. But we never forget who put us into that state and how she's inherent in that state. not only in Paramasiva, which she dissolves into, from the lowest chakra to the highest, Sri Ramakrishna said she wants to race to get to Lord Shiva. So if you can hold on to her skirts, as it were, she'll take you there. That's how Sri Ramakrishna experienced Nirvikalpa, through her rushing to the crown of the head. And so in that way, that's going to be the ultimate result using this precious practice of japa. So we said a lot then today about the worship of Shiva, and worship and study of Shiva and Shakti. You can see how the two go together to produce the finest of all spiritual effects, which is enlightenment of the mind, transformation of the mind, purity of the mind, to realize its innate nature as Brahman. Pure mind is Brahman, as Ramakrishna used to say. Now, in the remaining time, and it'll be maybe a new record to get 4 charts done in one class, but we have been moving along at a good clip. So let's look at this. You can see some of the sacred bijams or seeds in the 10 minutes remaining. I gathered some of these and gave them definitions. It's very hard to define bijams. That is, ordinary bijams like you had down here, ordinary talk, you can define those words. Oh, what does ordinary mean? Conventional, boring, so forth. Everyone knows what those words mean. But these power bijams that Divine Mother gives to Lord Brahma at the beginning of a creation, and if we even think about Lord Brahma, what do we sing? Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurur Eva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Lord Brahma, he gets this seed, this powerful bijam from Mother at the very beginning of a whole cycle called a yuga, or better yet, a mahayuga, or maybe even faster time than that. But let's just say the 4 yugas of Kali, Dwapara, Treta, and Satya all fall within one mahayuga. And that's a very, very long time. It's longer than the time that science assigns to the origin of this world, when you add it up. So it means that it's originless. Like my teacher used to say, scientists think matter is destructible. It's not destructible. It's not indestructible either, which would be the next step to go to, right? It's actually non-originated. It doesn't have an origin. It doesn't have a beginning. It doesn't have an end. It just seems to. And this is what Maya is making time look like in the human mind, especially in one 80-year lifetime. But to think of a bunch of speculations of other line of beings all the way back to the beginning of time, so-called beginning of time. So basically thinking on a much different level here, these swamis, these great souls. See, it's not destructible or indestructible. You're missing the point. You must go beyond the dualities, destructible, indestructible, and get to the unoriginated. That's what the great seers have realized about time, about space, about name, about form, and about causation. That it's all in Maya. And Maya is causing everything to seem cyclic. But if you're like Buddha, you want to get out of the river and sit on the banks and watch for a while. Then you'll see the same thing go by and get, oh, see that? It's repeating. See the same garbage heap go by. You see, there's these going up and down the Columbia River. Sometimes I drive up there to do some work of spreading the darshana on us, and see the same garbage scow going up, hauling a bunch of garbage up the river and coming back down empty. So almost like a japa, in, out, in, out. So anyway, you sit on the banks of the river, you'll see things repeat itself all the time. And you don't have that advantage if you're in the flow. That's one way in which being in the flow is not necessarily a positive thing. You want to get out of the flow. How about that? Well, being in the body is a good thing. Yes, but have you experienced being out of the body and still retaining your divine consciousness, your witness consciousness? So, happiness is good. Yes, but have you experienced the bliss that's in you, that's unalloyed and uninterrupted? Well, asana is good. Yes, but have you experienced mental asana, which has nothing to do with the body and which takes you out of the body? We always have to lead people to a higher thing than they've been restricted to by their own mental process. Give them something higher. Sri Ramakrishna did that. So what was I saying? I was saying that these bijams are very hard to define. So here you see Om, Aim, Hrim, Klim, Krim, Shrim, and there are others, but these are the main ones. We know they're connected to the goddesses, various aspects of the goddess. Om, of course, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that's Brahman's word. That's the word of the formless Brahman. It has everything contained within it, but if you looked at it, you'd see it has, it's representative of timeless awareness. Nice thing to say just after we talked about time. And it's the medium for absolute and relative both. So Om isn't just transcendent. It has in it everything that's relative, right? AUM, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, father, mother, and guru, immanent, transcendent, and absolute. All these Tripudi designations you use for the word A, like creation, preservation, and destruction, or projection, sustenance, withdrawal. So you can see how it's transcendent, but it has everything within it. And I think that's precisely why in the beginning was Word, the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Because that's three different things Jesus was trying to communicate to John. And they didn't really figure that out very well, or flesh it out, or think about it, do manana on it, and come up with a conclusion, siddhanta, like India does. What did he really mean when he said that? Well, let's look at it philosophically by the ancient systems that have come out of Divine Mother, and then we'll know. She's the authority, not us. So we use that intelligence within us to think about that. Now, Om, Aim would be next. We just sang Vani Saraswati Vagdevi. That's her precious word. You know, the goddess Saraswati, you think of Aim, A-I-M. You could maybe say, if you turn it into English, aim. So you should aim for goddess Saraswati. It's the herald of spiritual wisdom, and it's the subtle key of creation. These are 2 bullet points. I could say very, very sparse, very little things to say about these bijams. These are what sticks in the mind of the seers when they think about them. How about the opposite side of the page? No, let's just go down that left side. Hrim. That we'd think of Mother Durga and Mother Kali. This is the word of transporting power. If it's in your mantra, then you're interested in transformation of consciousness into higher consciousness. Hrim is that power that does that. So Hrim is the implement of refinement in spiritual practice, and it's also the neutralizer of negativity. Durga is known for that, 10-armed goddess. Amaji as 8-armed goddess, and so forth. Kali is 4-armed goddess. So this is when you put yourself under the care of, or let's put it this way, you do put yourself under the care of the goddess of transformation when you have the bijam, Shrim, in your mantra. Then going on, Shrim, when you think of Shrim, well, here's the beautiful goddess of wealth, abundance, prosperity. Not just prosperity of material things, but prosperity of wisdom, knowledge, compassion, goodness, dharma, and so forth. So that would be Lakshmi's, or Narayani, sometimes they call her, or Padmini, different names for her. That would be her seed bijam. It's the harbinger of quality and quantity. It's the bestower of mature fulfillment. So you get fulfilled by this. You have that in your mantra. You're probably a worshipper of Lakshmi, and you're seeking fulfillment of everything you've ever desired, and in both quantity and quality, be a way of saying it. Working our way around, next comes Hrim. And you see each one of these beads, each one of these bijams is pointing to one of the beads on her mantra, on her mala, that's encircling her, half of her body there. Off to her left or right. See that mala there. So, Krim then would be the bijam of insight, the oracle of infallible omniscience, the revealer of eternal perfection. I would say probably you could associate that with Maheshwari, or one of those goddesses that has to do with detail, just perfect in every detail. There's an aspect of Mother that people worship, like Savitri would also come to mind. Just goddesses that are just, their omniscience is just fathomless, and every little detail is perfect. They see everything. There are women like that who manifest that aspect of the goddess, who are that detailed in their scrutiny. It would be a good thing to have if you, back here, if you inspected awareness of yourself. Say, well, I think I'll take that bijam cream, think about Maheshwari, and inspect my consciousness now. You'll get some things revealed to you. You might not like all of them, but you'll definitely know what's in you. After all, you're looking for perfection, which is your true nature, so anything that gets in the way of that is not allowed. Last, and it's good timing here, we come to Klim, the bija of transformation. It's the impetus for revolution in consciousness, and it's the weapon of regeneration. So these are points to think about, cogitate on, do some manana with, and that has to do more with these bijams. Below there are the 4 Mahavakyas. That's more toward the formless. We don't have time to bridge that today, but we have given teachings on those great 4 Mahavakyas, which the monks, the swamis, often take for their once a day repetition of. You need to say those once, fully understand them, to have a revolution in consciousness that many repetitions of the bijam klim, for instance, would bring about in the practitioner's mind. So this whole class ends fittingly with Saraswati being examined and all the bijams and the aspects of the goddess in terms of the worship of Shakti and the knowledge, both, that is inherent in them. So here, let's end with a Sanskrit sloka and be timely in our conclusion. Om Tachnayo, Om Tachnayo Ravrini Mahe Gatung Yagyaya Gatung Ye Nupataye Daivi Swastarastu Naha Swastir Manusebhyaha Urdvam Jigatu Bhesajam Samnoastu Dvipade Samchatushpate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we make a great offering of the small self into the indivisible self. May we always delight in this offering and always revere the Lord and Mother of all mantras. May divine blessings be upon us. May peace be unto the entire human race. May healing, well-being, and prosperity also then abide among us. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all. Om